Welcome everybody, Adelaide United fans of our A-League men's competition, or of course our A-League women's competition. It is the second instalment of the Roundtable. Jarrod Walsh here, absolutely honoured to be on the microphone today, and on behalf of the Adelaide United Football Club, wanted to give a huge shout out to our major partners, Flinders University, UCAN, McDonald's, Kite Property, RAA, Australian Outdoor Living, alongside Triple M for hosting us today, as I officially welcome the same panellists we had this time last year, all former Adelaide United players who have contributed to the history of the football club as we are celebrating our 20th anniversary this year. Bruce Djite, welcome to you. It's great to see you again.
It's good to be back here again.
Travis Dodd, wonderful to see you here once again, mate. Thank you for taking some time to be with us.
Pleasure, and a pleasure for you boys to all see me as well.
And Robbie Cornthwaite, who I would like to give you full credit for saying we're in the same formation of last year as well, in the way that we are sitting, which is beautiful. Robbie, welcome to you.
Yeah, why change something that works, I reckon. Oh, it's probably the first time I've seen you boys since last year anyway. So, nice to be here.
It's wonderful to have you all in here. As we said, it's the 20th anniversary of the football club. There's a documentary which is actually going to be released on Tuesday, the 17th of October, called The People's Club, 20 Years of Adelaide United. So just stay tuned for more information about the release. Question without notice before we get into having a look at specifically the A-League men's competition. Apart from the championship, I'll start with you, Bruce. Some fond memories over the past 20 years of Adelaide United, whether it's a supporter or a player or a football director or now a keen observer and pundit.
Yeah, a couple. Obviously, winning the grand final at Adelaide Oval is impossible to surpass. But even as football director, watching the boys beat Melbourne City in that Australia Cup final at Hindmarsh was awesome as well. So they're probably the two that first come to mind. But plenty more. I'm sure the other boys can elaborate on that.
What about you, Trav, former skipper of the club? So for you, I'm sure you've got some fond memories. I actually still have a Travis Dodd Perth Glory shirt at home, which I hold on to. But we talk about Adelaide United here.
Yeah, no, for me, as a player, it would be that run for the Champions League, the Asian Champions League. It was just phenomenal that we had no right really to be there, to be part of that and compete as well as we did. And we proved everyone wrong. So who did you score against?
Scored against Kashima.
That's right.
I scored the own goal in the first leg. You scored the first one.
And then
I put us one up.
And I missed a sitter in the second leg.
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Thankfully.
Yeah.
But I'd have to agree with Trav. I think that Asian Champions League run to the final was probably the best. And I suppose as someone that was not there in the NSL when they first came in, but the first year of the A-League to cross paths with Trav all those years ago, Brucey a year or so later, it's crazy to think it's been 20 years since we all sort of came together almost.
I wanted to ask you about connection back into the football club, because I think apart from maybe the past 5 years, it's something we probably could have been better at as a football club. But now I have a look at where we are celebrating the anniversary now, and a lot of great people are making their way back to the football club. So I use the example of Eugene Galakovic, who's part of the coaching staff. Marcelo Karuska now, whose academy is part of the Adelaide United fabric. But Robbie, you've been part of the club the past 12 years of what you've been doing with the media team, and Trav, even something as powerful as our Welcome to Country video, which is absolutely imperative to have and to recognise the contribution from Indigenous footballers, and Bruce, your role as well. I feel we're at a place of authenticity. We can always get better, but in a milestone celebration, how important is it to continually reach out to our past players and people that have contributed to the club?
Oh, I think it's critical. You know, it's the culture of the club. It's a culture that club should be seeking to achieve. I think other sporting codes have been celebrating their history quite well. In this country. Football still has a way to go, but Adelaide United, probably one of the best clubs when it comes to, still celebrating the past as well as delivering a forward vision. So, yeah, I think the club does a very good job in that space, and as you said, hasn't always been the case. I remember even the way Doddsy left and, the way Eugene left and the way,
Flores,
Flores, Cassie,
yeah.
like there were, the club did it very, very poorly, not just on the exit, but also, post playing career, etc. There's a much more acute focus on making sure that we celebrate club champions and the like, or at least engage in alumni, if you like, of the football club.
And it's taking those learnings, I guess. Trav, Bruce mentioned your name. It's traditionally been probably some past greats of the club that weren't handled in the way that they should have been. But having a look at Cassio now, with Bernardo hopefully going into a fully fit season, he had a choice where he wanted to play. So he wouldn't be advised to come to Adelaide if it wasn't a safe and comfortable place for him to play his football.
That's right. And if you look at the environment that the club has created now over the last couple of years, it's been fantastic. We're seeing players engaged, former players engaged, and it's hard. It's a hard thing for a club because I think the priority is the players and playing and winning games. That's what the fans want. The fans want championships. So the club needs to have a focus on that, and sometimes that can take up a lot of time. You need the resources within staffing to be able to create all of this stuff. And I think the next step for Adelaide United hopefully will be, and we've spoken about it, I've spoken to the club about it previously, is the organisation of a past players club within Adelaide United. So, look, that's something that I know the club is keen on exploring.
I mean, we were mentioning it just this morning. There's a new media manager on board at the club, Lucas. He's come across from Port Adelaide. He's got a lot of great ideas. Brucey mentioned other sports celebrating past players really, really well, and I know that's a key focus of his. So it was literally mentioned 10 minutes ago downstairs having a coffee, and that's an area.
I also feel like there's a bit of a time lag required as well. We might forget that Adelaide United's a very young club still, so in order to be able to build that critical mass of past players to justify having a past players club, that takes time too. So, I think everything's on the right track.
So I need you all to play your roles really well here. I'm putting my best Carl Viet on without the swearing because I'm a fan. There's nothing that the club can really do that will make me upset. I'm full of emotion. There might be decisions that are made that I'll react to, but ultimately I'm the fan. You guys have played and represented the club. You've all represented your country. The reason why we've got together today is to get your critical analysis of what's happened and what you think is going to happen moving into the A-League men's season, because there's a lot of unknown. There's been a little bit of movement, not much player movement for Adelaide United, but the players that have moved on are significant players. And we even look at Nestoria and Kunda, where we expect it's going to be his last season at the football club. So there's a lot to go into. The first question, and I'll start with you, Robbie, is for Carl and the side that he's put together. Where do they need to improve after a really disappointing exit and especially probably a disappointing month to finish off their campaign last season?
I mean, the obvious answer and the easy answer for me is defensively. I mean, over the last couple of years, they've been a side that has leaked a lot of goals, and it's been something that's been raised on many occasions, whether it's, go and sign a foreign centre-back or we're too young or we're too old or whatever it is. But Carl's always subscribed to the philosophy of if they score 4, we score 5. And maybe some people don't agree with that. They think championships are built on the back of strong defences. And Carl's someone who likes to play open, expansive football. So I won't go too much into that. I think there is a few players that could come back and help settle the time. I think Nick Ansell, when he's fit, is probably the best centre-back at the club, but he's had some issues with his body. So hopefully he can get himself right. I think holding on to Joe Gauchi is another big win. I think after he made his Socceroos debut, there was maybe a chance that some clubs come calling for him. But as a young keeper, if you're going to go overseas and be number 2 or 3 keeper at a big club, there's no point going. You might as well stay here for another 3 or 4 seasons and play regular football before he gets a move to be the number 1. I think the other area that I think the club could, or Carl could make some adjustments is in the flexibility of the way that they play. I think over the past 2 years, we've seen them play one style of football, one formation, one game plan. I think it wouldn't hurt maybe at times to just have a little bit of a plan B. Maybe it's go 2 up top. I'm not saying you have to go 3 at the back or change the whole formation, but it has always been a gung-ho approach. And I think we saw at the pointy end of last season, at times maybe they could have done something different and been a little bit more successful. That said, we'll get to it in a little while. They've had some good preseason results, 1-0 wins, which you don't usually see from this side, but I suppose the defence and maybe a little bit more flexibility are the 2 areas that I'd like to see improvement.
It's an interesting thing that about the flexibility, because as a coach at a much lower level, either at NPL, you can quite easily get caught into a habit of something's not going right. Okay, I'm going to change it up. All right, that doesn't go right. I'm going to change it up again. And I've been through that myself. So, yeah, I back Scruff for having that confidence within his playing group. And
Sorry,
himself.
Scruff?
Carl.
Scruff.
Yeah.
Are you going to
Sorry.
give anybody an indication of why you called him Scruff? Remember, I'm the fan.
I don't know. I started at Adelaide City when I was 16. I think Scruff was already gone then. Scruff's been Scruff since I was at Adelaide City.
Okay.
So, what was that? 20 years ago. 27 years
You
ago.
need to find out the origins of that when you play golf with him
Scruffy
next
hair,
to
maybe?
Grange,
I don't
right?
know.
Okay.
But anyway, Carl, so I back him for backing himself and the playing group. I agree with Cornflakes, the defence, but it's not necessarily, for me, players, personnel. It could be the structure from the front. You know, yes, goals get leaked, but defence starts from the strikers. So is it the right structure setting up defensively? That's what I think, maybe look into that. But you look at the goals they conceded, 46 goals. It was the third worst in the league. No problem scoring goals. If you can cut those goals down, finishing third puts you in a top 2 position.
I think I want to ask you this, Bruce, as an observer, the Central Coast games that we had at the back end of last year, all of those games, I could almost feel as a fan about 5 or 10 minutes into those games that we weren't in those games, because I could see the pressure that the Mariners were putting on Adelaide United and the counters that they had. And I just thought they're just a level above with their application to how hard they were working. Is that a mindset thing as well that they need to start trying to improve moving into that, alongside potentially some structural things, Bruce?
Look, I remember doing broadcasts for those games, and what was clear was, I think it was a quality issue. You know, we had an inability to break the Mariners' press, right? And I remember at the time thinking, you know what, the only way Melbourne City win the grand final is if they have the quality to get through the Mariners' press, because the Mariners' press was as close to perfect as could be. And as you saw in the grand final, even City struggled even worse with that. You know, it made Adelaide United look like they did a pretty good job in the semi. But there is a challenge there around being able to keep the ball, break those lines when it comes to a Mariners. And Mariners have had their changes, and we might see a completely different sort of setup this year. But that hurt us last year, you know, the inability to break that Mariners press.
The squad is a little bit different. It was pleasing to watch the Adelaide United team win the NPL Championship, probably much to the anger of some other NPL clubs that didn't want to see that. But the standout players for Adelaide United and the goal scorers were all Adelaide United senior listed players, like Johnny Yull was there, Jovanovic, Ethan Alagic played well, Panache Madana, who's been rewarded with the 3-year contract. So the plan seems to be working. We don't need to go on the ins and outs of Craig Goodwin's departure, but Robbie, do you think that this is going to force Carl's hand maybe a little bit to have a look at being a bit different and having that plan B, because Craig's not there, and as Nathan Cosmina said to the members the other night, he's irreplaceable. So how do you actually build a squad around everybody else? Because a fair bit of change needs to happen.
Well, absolutely. I think they're two different sort of, not arguments, but two different topics. The youth team winning versus how do you replace Craig Goodwin. You just look at Ange Postecoglou at Tottenham, Harry Kane leaving, everyone said, how are they going to score? What are they going to do? Other players step up and maybe you start to play slightly differently. Maybe we'll see the ball not going down the left so much this time this season. Obviously, someone else different is going to be taking set pieces. But I think when you look across the board and you start with Hiroshi Ibasuki, he couldn't quite get his body right last year. He wasn't at his best. Ben Halloran, for me, had one of his worst seasons at Adelaide United before he went to South Korea. He was absolutely flying, looking at double digits in terms of goal scoring. I thought last year he was really, really poor, and he's one player that absolutely must get back to his best football if he's going to contribute. Obviously, you mentioned Bernardo. He was out injured for nearly the whole season. Clough was sort of in and out. I think if you look across the board, outside of Craig and maybe Nestor, nobody else was really at the level that we expect. So there's a lot of guys there that have got a lot of improvement that are going to add a lot more goals. I think Hiroshi is probably capable of getting close to double digits if he gets some good service. I think if Nesta starts every game, he could, in the course of a season, he could get double digits as well. So there is goals in that side, but I think there is improvement across all of them that is definitely needed. And from what we've heard, Ben Halloran has been working extremely hard this offseason, lost 5 kilos. I haven't seen that for myself. That was what I've been told. But he's a guy that I don't want to put a rocket up him, but I was really disappointed with him last year, and I think he was too.
You look at the squad that they've got now, yes, they haven't gone out and bought a number of players. So there is going to be that reliance on the young players, the young boys. Now, Aaron Kunda didn't start a game. Ethan Alagic played 7. Panache had 3, Jovanovic 5, and Johnny Yule had 2 starts. So between 5 or 6 players, you've got under 15 starts. Now, they're, I think, going to be players that potentially Carl is going to have to rely on this year and give them a go. Give these young boys a go. Now, you talked about the NPL. Yes, and I think maybe that's what the issue is with the club, that these boys are training in a professional environment and then coming down to a semi-professional environment and playing. But it is what it is.
You coached against all those guys, right? Outside of Nesta, who do you think is going to jump out of the pack and have a season where Carl maybe just has to pick him?
We played Adelaide United in the second to last game of the regular season. Only Johnny Yule and Luka Jovanovic played in that game. They destroyed us. In the first, they played, I think Luka played Johnny played 45 minutes, scored, came off at half-time, job done. Luka played another 15 minutes, 20 minutes. I was a bit annoyed at Scruffer because at golf the week before he goes, nah, they're both only playing 45 minutes. So I'm going to training on Thursday going, these 2 boys are only going to play 45. Come out at half time, Luca's still there. I'm like, Scruff, killing me. But no, for me, it'll be, I think those 2 boys. Aaron Kunda, we have seen a lot of coming off the bench, but I rate Ethan as well. I think his composure, even seeing him at an NPL level, yes, it's a different level, but his composure, movement, distribution is fantastic.
Look, I'm so proud that the youth team won that competition, partly because I remember when we went and spoke to Football South Australia, there were some regulations that didn't allow some movement of younger players when I started as football director. And I remember saying to them, look, the days of playing 20, 21-year-olds, they're gone. That's not the philosophy we want to be following. We're looking at having a youth team, 15, 16, 17-year-olds, maybe. And at the time, it was challenging, right? But it's so great to see the club continue down that path. And there's a time lag on those sort of decisions. But I remember when we recruited Ayrton and we recruited Carl, and everyone's rowing in the same direction, and we're starting to see the fruits of that labour, for want of a better phrase, start to ripen. And is this the time where Adelaide United youth team starts to dominate the NPL year in, year out? Potentially. When you look at, you said Nathan recently said to the members forum, that Goodwin's irreplaceable. I disagree with that. I mean, everyone's irreplaceable. Barcelona's replaced Messi. Tottenham's replaced Harry Kane. Real Madrid's replaced Ronaldo. With all due respect to Craig, everyone's replaceable. Is it easy? No. When the purse strings are tight as well, it makes it even more challenging. But everyone's replaceable. And I feel like every season or every other season, this is the discussion, right? Because you lose your best players because we operate in a global marketplace. There's always going to be, bigger fish out there that players want to chase, and so they should. They should be ambitious, but there's also a salary cap here and limited budget. So I look at the players who've come and gone from the club, and every time it's been a catastrophe. Marcos Flores leaving. Oh my God, we're going to have a terrible season. Riley McGree leaving. Oh my God. Craig Goodwin leaving. Oh my God. Isaias at the time.
They say that when I left?
Yeah.
I think they did. Okay.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. So,
I wasn't here. So
but I think what fans need to also understand is that without those players moving on to bigger and better things, for want of another better phrase, you never see Irankunda because his path is blocked by another player. So if you hoarded all the great exports that Adelaide United have ever had, then you probably never see some of these young shining lights get the opportunity to play, show their worth, and then leave as well. So, it is a bit of a balancing act there.
The other thing on the back of that, Bruce, is you look at the names like Giselle, Bernardo, Yull, Bovalina, Madana. They're all on 3-4 year deals now. The club has gone, all right, these guys have done really well. We're not going to give them 1 year deals and then maybe another A-League club comes and takes them like they have in the past, or if they do go overseas, the club's going to get something in return. But the list of young guys is basically 8 of your starting 11 maybe in 3 years' time with a couple of foreigners and a couple of senior players. There's a lot to be excited about.
And you know what? A bunch of them are going to leave. And there'll be another young bunch that comes through. Look at Mohamed Toure. Jovanovic ain't playing if Toure's still here. So I think, if we can start to see more and more, and that's the difficulty, how deep is the production line? But if we can make sure that, those youth players are playing in the NPL at a relatively young age as teenagers, 15, 16-year-olds, and they're successful at that level, and then those star players, your good ones, end up moving on, that's a freeway that can accelerate them to be able to be playing A-League games at 16 or 17 years old, and that's a really attractive proposition for overseas clubs. And then you start to get on the wheel that your Ajaxes and other great selling European clubs are on. Because outside of Real Madrid, Barcelona, Man City, every club's a selling club. There's some Saudi clubs now that probably aren't selling clubs. They're buying clubs.
Yeah.
But outside of that small circle of clubs, everyone's a selling club. We shouldn't be ignorant or arrogant to think Adelaide United won't be a selling club because we love the players. Of course we love the players. But if there's a young crop coming through, then how exciting is that?
I want to ask you all about Nestori Irankunda in isolation in a moment, but Trav, I wanted to direct this towards you and ask about player coverage. So Robbie mentioned at the start, defensively, we need to be really careful about the talent that there is defensively. Nick Ansell's name was mentioned when he's fully fit. Absolutely outstanding he was. There was a game, I think, against Wellington last season at home where he was brilliant. Lockie Barr is exactly the same when fit. We saw that Alexander Popovic couldn't get a game towards the end of the season. Do you think it's that area that probably needs the most attention if January comes along and Adelaide United have the opportunity to look at players? Because I think last year defensively was the biggest question mark for me, where you can't just bring anyone in to fill the roles that are void by injured or suspended players.
Yeah, but I think the breakdown has to be when you're conceding goals, how are you conceding goals? Is it, okay, your centre-backs are getting skinned in one-on-one positions, okay, then we've got to look at replacing players. But if they're playing through the middle of the park and not getting tracked and things like that, then it becomes about structure. Have I got the right players in the midfield? Have I got the right players up front? Are they showing the defenders the right way? So it's easy to throw darts at defensive type players, but ultimately it may come down to that. Maybe it comes down to, it's been a while since we've had an experienced leader at the back. Probably Jakobsen was the last one that we've had that can really drive a team and give instruction and really be forceful in instructing a team. And that's what I think we should expect from Isaias. Issa, if he's playing, maybe throwing him at the back. I know that's a bit of a curveball. He's 35. Are we going to get done for pace? But he's got a lot of experience. Is he going to be able to have that foresight to instruct players in front of him? Maybe.
Robbie, what are your thoughts? Because you're the experienced defender out of the whole panel here.
Don't let us lecture you about how to defend.
I was sticking up for you there, man.
No, I appreciate that, Trev. I think a lot of the things that I see that have gone wrong or have been done incorrectly are just fundamentals. I think it's very, very small attention to details, side on, when to drop, when to push up, which leg to block with. I remember, and Trav spoke about this as one of his frustrations as a coach, conceding goals from throw-ins. Like, how do you concede a goal when you've got the throw-in? Like, just little things like that maybe lapses in concentration or, they're the things that really frustrate me. A cross that comes in and a striker that gets across the front of you and scores a great header, you're going to go, well, I was right on him. Like, it's a great goal. What am I going to do about that? But just little things about being out of position are the things that frustrate me. But, Carl spoke on Saturday at the family open session, and he said they're trying a few different things and they're trying to play a little bit differently. They're trying to defend a little bit differently, and he's been encouraged by what he's seen. So I'm not out at training. I haven't been at training in years. It's quite far away, as Bruce would know. So I don't know what they're doing out there day to day. So I don't want to say, they're not doing enough defensively. At the moment, they haven't conceded goals against 2 A-League opposition. In the Cup, they copped 5, I think it was, against Wanderers and a really poor night. So I think we'll have to wait and see the start of the season before we make any sort of judgment calls. I think Ryan Tennercliffe in the middle of the midfield is that guy that Trav was speaking about, Isaias. From all reports, he's a guy that wants the ball. He wants to be the boss in the middle of the park. He wants to take responsibility. So whether he's going to make a big difference in terms of stopping the ball from getting to the back four, we know he's famous for his tackles. So let's hope he gets a few of those right this season. So I think he'll make a bit of a difference as well. But I think a lot of it comes down to fundamentals, basics. And I thought Popper had a poor year last year. I thought he burst onto the scene, was really good. And last year, maybe things, chopping and changing. He didn't look settled to me. So I'm hoping he bounces back and has a big year as well.
And you've got to also think, Mark Milligan's there in the coaching team as well as assistant, obviously. Without pumping his tyres up too much, but one of the better defensive players this country's ever produced, So we can be here and pontificate about what they should or shouldn't be doing.
You've been working with harps too much, man.
Yeah. I got the harps dictionary thesaurus in the glove box, so check that before I got here.
Google.
Mills is there, and he will be instructing, teaching, coaching, of course. How best to address those defensive issues.
You got a definition there, Trav, of pontificate?
Okay. Express one's opinions in a pompous and dogmatic way. Now,
were you doing that in the change rooms when you were playing, Bruce? Were you pontificating?
I was pretty quiet in the change rooms.
Okay.
Trav, on the other hand.
Well, he's just had to Google the word.
Yeah.
Let's focus on Nestori Irinkunda, and there's a reason why I want to ask specifically about him. If we're to believe all reports, and Robbie, you're probably closest to any of this than we are, Nestor's able to leave the club at the end of this season because of his age. He's not tied to the club due to the rules put in place by Football Australia or the A-Leagues. And therefore, he's potentially off to Europe.
Yep.
I asked the question of Carl at the Members Forum, is Nestor going to start? As simple as that. And Carl's response is the one that I wanted to kind of break down with you, because Carl indicated, Nestor's in a position where he can if he really wants to, and he really wants it. So for me, it's come down to physically, maybe he's got in the preseason a bit more Ks in the tank, but mentally and his application to football as a teenager is the telltale whether he's going to do that or not. And I think we saw at the end of last year, there were times where Nick Montgomery was very specific on putting Jacob Tradd on when Nestor went onto the pitch because he knew he could get into... Oh, sorry, Jacob Farrell, not Jacob Tradd, because he knew he could get inside his head. And that happened. So let's start with you, Robbie, about Nestor. We'll get you starting 11 at the end of this, but is he ready to start? Should he start? Is it more of a mental thing?
Yeah, I think he has got a lot of growing to do mentally. I spoke to him a couple of weeks ago. The club probably weren't too happy with that or with what he had to say, but he was honest and he said, it's been very tough to deal with the speculation over the last couple of months of constantly being linked to Bayern Munich. Listen, is the deal done? I believe it's not done. Do I think it's going to happen? 100%. I think there's just a little bit of legal paperwork and stuff to take care of. So hopefully once that's done, that'll clear his head a little bit. I don't know Nestor, but he comes across as the type of kid that just wants to play football. He wants to play games. He wants to score. He wants to run. That's not always what being a professional footballer is all about. He's got a little bit of an ankle injury at the moment. I think he's back full training this week, so there's plenty of time to get fit. But you know, is he doing all the right things to get himself back on the park? Is he going to all these appointments? Is he going to, I don't know. He just strikes me as the type of guy that just wants to play, and maybe all that other stuff that comes with being a professional, your prehab, your diet, all this kind of stuff, maybe isn't there just yet. But he's 17 years old. There's not many 17-year-olds in the world that are doing all of those things 100% correctly all of the time. They've got a lot of distractions. At the end of the day, a lot of them are still kids. I think Nesta is in a position to start. I almost feel like if Carl just says to him, which I know Carl does, I trust you. I'm going to put you out there. I think he can have a real impact this season. Maybe he doesn't play 90 minutes. Maybe he plays 60. Maybe he doesn't start every week. But I'd love to see him start a bunch of games and really see what he's capable of.
I agree. I don't see him as a 90-minute player in his first real season. I think the fear for me is he's had a great breakout year. It's always that second year. Can they come back and replicate what they've done? So much expectation now from everybody that he comes on and scores bombs. So people are just going to be expecting that. Fans are going to be expecting that.
That's what the fans want, yeah.
That from the first minute he's going to start dribbling players, putting them top corner. It is not going to happen. He is going to go games upon games without scoring. That is a reality. It's how he deals with that, how he motivates himself to keep going with that. Look, I think going to Europe at this age, you know, without the experience of playing games is a mistake. You know, the reality is if he goes to Bayern Munich, he's not going to stay there. They're going to loan him out. Where are they going to loan him out to? We've seen that with Jarrod Walsh. Signs at Newcastle, goes to Hearts, disaster, goes somewhere else, and then it becomes a merry-go-round. So the other thing, I question, I was watching, what was the last tournament that the 17s or that they played at? I watched a couple of games, and even at a national team level, turns the ball over and there's not a real desire to win the ball back. Gets the ball, just wants to take players on and do the exciting stuff, instead of the simple stuff. So I hope that he can get that mindset right to, play simple and, be flashy and classy when he needs to be.
Yeah, mindset's definitely going to be a challenge for him. I think how he manages his emotions is going to be really important. I think what Dodgy said is exactly right. There'll be long spells where he might not score goals or might not have a significant input on the game. And, if he can understand that that's part and parcel of football, let alone being a 16, 17-year-old, then he puts himself in a good frame of mind. Last year, post-game, when the team was struggling or when he didn't score and even the team won, he was really down, like really down.
That was visible. All the fans visibly down. It was visible, yeah.
And it's just like, I know you're a teenager, but how mature are you in your brain? And that's something that he's really going to have to learn to deal with. Else teams will do the Jacob Farrell on him. Imagine you get
that was a theme of the end of last year, wasn't it? Yeah.
7, 8, 9 teams doing that, and all of a sudden, he's not the asset that we all expect of him. The expectations obviously there. I don't think that should dawn on him too much at that age. I don't think he, carries a team on his shoulders or anything like that. But, in terms of Dodgy's comment on going overseas a mistake because he doesn't have the experience and, Jarrod Walsh where he got loaned to, I think that's where the club has to be sort of firm on that transfer. I mean, we experienced this with the Riley McGree transfer where, an MLS club bought him, great tick, money in, etc. But prior to us doing that deal, that we knew that he was going on loan, and really important part in terms of my conversation with Riley is, mate, we've got to make sure where they're sending you on loan to is actually going to be good for you, at least for the 18 months till they get into the competition. So, it was great. We had us as Adelaide United really looking after Riley's interests, as well as was it Cincinnati, the club that Charlotte that bought him, actually really looking out for his interests as well as our own. You can often find a win-win, So to get him to Birmingham in the championship was a massive tick because it sort of suits his style, that explosive box to box, He was happy to go there. You know, Charlotte were paying us the fee anyway. The deal was structured well, and now look at him. It's obviously things can go wrong, but you know, if he's going to Bayern and then going to a regional Liga team in Germany, maybe not the best.
Yeah.
But if he's going to Bayern and there's a legitimate thought process around, okay, this is the 4-3-5 year strategy for him. We're going to loan him here because we know they need that position, and then it could work. But all those things need to fall into place.
Let's quickly turn our attention to some of the other teams in the A-League men's competition, because while Adelaide United have made that recruit of Tunnicliffe coming in, there's some familiar names that are finding different homes going into this season, which is going to strengthen the squads. We talk of Aziz Bayic. Daniel Arzani moves to Melbourne Victory. It's a different Daniel Arzani than when we saw him originally at Melbourne City. Rukavica comes back. There's a lot of big names, but also some of the younger players we see now are getting Socceroos experience. So, Robbie, I think it's great as a fan to see the other teams get better. Also some big names, big Australian names too, so we can go and see some of our players who have played for the Socceroos actually play in our own league. But it's going to make it more challenging for Adelaide United when every other team around us is getting better.
Absolutely. And just on that point, obviously, Kaya Simon and Courtney Vine are in the Liberty League this season, so make sure you get and watch those Matildas that did so well at the Women's World Cup. Obviously, the team that comes immediately to mind, and I'm sure you're all thinking the same, is Brisbane. Obviously, just lost the Australia Cup final against Sydney FC. Ross Aloisi just turned that club around, a bit of an Ange Postecoglou in the space of 3 months. I spoke to Scott Neville, who's there, and he basically said it's a bit like when Popper was there, not exactly the same, but Ross has come in, completely turned the club around. Obviously, Kaz Patafta and Zach Anderson are in the backroom staff as well, taking care of the back end of things. And from what I understand, that club's done a 360. Ross was here, had a great relationship with the players. He's not everyone remembers him as this hothead. That's not who he is. I mean, when Josh Cavallo decided that he was going to come out, the first person he came out to was Ross Aloisi. That's how much trust he had in Ross. And then Ross goes away, works at Yokohama under Kevin Muscat. I'm sure he learned a hell of a lot there. And he's come back and he's having a real impact early. It doesn't mean they're going to go and win the A-League, but I think they're going to be a real improved side. And you mentioned young players. They've got Henry Hoare, Waddington, the striker, who's been banging them in. Parsons has come back from Sydney after starting out at Brisbane. So I think there's a lot to like about Brisbane, and in that same breath, Sydney FC. They stuck with Steve Corica. He's made a couple of really good signings. Obviously, the striker, the Brazilian Fabio on loan, scored a couple of goals off the bench in the final. I mean, Lolly and Mack. That might be the best front three in the whole league. I mean, Melbourne City obviously can have claims to that, but Naboo's out for the whole season and Tilio's not there anymore. So I think that Sydney FC 3 could be the scariest in the league. I know it's easy to say because they just made the Australia Cup final, but for me, those two teams look vastly improved.
All right, you, Trav, who do we look out for?
Just on touching on Ross, you got to have that. You got to have that balance, and I think, not knowing Ross as a coach personally, but he's got a strong personality. And that is what I think a club like Brisbane needs, is a coach to come in and say, this is the lay of the land and it is my way or the highway type thing. And I don't know, I just have this perception that that's what he would be like, very firm with the playing group. And potentially that's what they need and getting out of it. You look at, what's the player that from France that signed MacArthur, that Sturjowski brought in, the striker. He's,
Jermaine? Is it Jermaine?
Jermaine, yeah. Spoke to Sturjowski when they played Campbelltown in the Cup. All right, it was his first game, but if we can see players like that coming and doing well, they can be excitement machines. Looking at MacArthur that night, I thought they were bang average and will probably struggle again this year. But I think it's going to be the same couple of teams again. I think it's going to be Melbourne City. I think it's going to be Sydney, and then it's the others to, I guess, fight it out for the rest.
I want to touch on Ross as well, partly because I love the bloke, but phenomenal coach. I think Brisbane's got their best chance of being successful with a coach such as Ross Aloisi. I think we've seen the early stages with the cup run. I think that team will continue to improve, and knowing Kaz and Zach personally, I think when they got announced, it was a bit like, oh, who are these? They're just footballers.
Yeah.
Well, they're really impressive young guys who've studied, ticked all the boxes, understand the game, understand what players need. I think Brisbane could be a bit of a dark horse this year. Really interested to see how the Mariners go, because we talk about Craig Goodwin. The Mariners have lost like a lot of their, what really brought them the championship last season. Cummings gone, Montgomery, he's gone to Hibbs. Again, the best will always go. That it'll be interesting to see. They're the defending champions. You can't shirk that. That's going to be interesting. But for me, it's Melbourne City, because I think what we'll see in Melbourne City, one, Vidicic, great coach, but two, they're a bit like the Brisbane Roar under the Ange era, in the sense that I don't think personnel matters too much, notwithstanding they've got a lot of quality in their squad, but the way that they play, it's the style of play, the ability to solve problems on the field as the game's going, and that winning mentality. It's hard for me to go past a team that will win the minor premiership, definitely. Finals, anything can happen, as we all know, but Melbourne City standouts for me.
I thought you were going to say it was their new assistant coach at Melbourne City.
Why?
Your old mate,
Yeah, but
Jamo.
There's always, we can never get through a round table or a conversation without Jamo's name.
We're not
No,
taking
just
calls,
pops
but
up.
someone's just called
He
in.
pops up everywhere.
We're going to get to your starting 11 in a moment. Again, I just want to ask you a quick question.
Can we
without
speak on Jamo?
Of course.
Just quickly?
Yeah, go for it, mate. This is your show.
No. But again, it comes back to why they're such a strong club, and I think Michael Petrillo's done a really good job there, because we talk about the ructions that had to happen here for us to start to look at past players' clubs, or to get Eugene back, or Carl in as head coach, and the culture this club's trying to build. Melbourne City's there in terms of, yes, of course, they've got more resources and they're able to do, to provide those opportunities. But it's great to see former players seamlessly moving into those roles when you talk about culture, what you're trying to build. So,
and it's funny, isn't it? Because when they first came into the competition, you could probably be forgiven that just thinking they're a soulless feeder club to Man City and New York City, just there to just do what they need to do and run as a business and not as an actual club.
Well, there's an arm to that. That's true,
But you can still have a good culture and do that at the same time.
I'll just take the soulless part out of what you said. I mean, yes, they are a feeder club, and Aaron Moy is a perfect example of that. Arzani maybe less so, but you can see where that works. But at the same time, they work extra, because why? There's another behemoth there in Melbourne Victory. Like, they have to work extra in terms of the club attracting people to come and watch their games and building that fan engagement. They do have to go that extra mile, because Melbourne Victory does have such a strong presence there.
They do, and there's a lot of pressure on Melbourne Victory this year. None of you mentioned Melbourne Victory as a team to watch. They welcome in Daniel Arzani, who, as I said, is a player that is almost trying to resurrect his career back in Australia. So we welcome 2 more teams into the competition in the next couple of years. It was announced this week. So from a holistic football sense, do you think this is something that we're going to see a lot more player movement now, or a real focus on younger players getting an opportunity? Using expansion in the AFL, when 2 new franchises came in, it took a bit of time for clubs to find their voice, to find their establishment, and we've seen that with Western United and MacArthur, but they are strategically placed in football parts of Australia. So, Robbie, just briefly before we head into your starting 11 for round 1, what are your thoughts on the teams coming in over the next couple of years?
Well, initially my thought is Auckland, if they have the right backing, which I believe the owner of Bournemouth in the Premier League is the preferred bidder. Yeah. That on paper looks pretty good, and to have a New Zealand derby would be a big fixture to have. I think that's a positive step in the right direction. I think in the past you've seen expansion clubs go one of two ways. They go and sign a big name marquee, a big name coach, and try to buy all the best players and have success straight away. And then there's other teams that try to build slowly. You look at MacArthur and it just doesn't seem to have worked out. Fastest growing region of Australia. Bruce would probably be able to correct me there with his property council hat on, but I think that's the fastest growing population in Australia. So you'd think over time it would work if they can get things right on the pitch. But I actually think Bruce might be best, having spent time at the Gold Coast. Brucey, what do you think about the best way to go about it?
I'm always positive on the expansion of the league. It comes with an equal level of apprehension as well, because, geez, I don't know what processes are run, and one was under Football Australia, this one's under A leagues. They're separated now, etc. Probably different processes, but time will tell. That's all I'd say. I mean, it's great to have the name. It's great to have this and the other. Like, we had Clive Palmer. He was one of the richest guys in the country. I mean, I don't think it's about necessarily financial power. It's more about the passion for the game, the legitimate intent to engage with community, the legitimate want or will to want to build something for the longer term, not just come in big marquee. Of course, you might need to do that initially to put bumps on seats. But far too often we've seen people come in, they go hard, they go too hard, too early, and after 2 or 3 years, they've either packed it in or they've completely just turned off the faucet, so they turn off the tap, and that it's left on a withering vine. Time will tell. Maybe not. I think the quality last season was awesome. The quality of the football was amazing. I'd argue it was probably the best quality the A-Leagues have seen. Expansion dilutes the quality. And that's what we saw probably prior to last season, the previous 4 or so before that, as your MacArthur comes in. I remember when I rocked up as football director, like, there was no Aussie centre-backs. Because Western United mopped up about 5.
Yeah.
and then MacArthur comes in as well. So it's good, but it just takes, like any acquisition or merger or expansion, takes a bit of time to bed it all down. But as Robbie said, it'll be great to have a New Zealand derby. It's great to have more content on the screens. I mean, it ticks a lot of boxes on the business side. On the football side, time will tell.
Trav?
Yeah, Bruce, he touched on it towards the end there. Dilution is the biggest issue that I see. What's a squad these days? 23, 24 players?
Maybe
more
with all the kids and that, yeah.
25, you've got to add another 50 professional players into the player pool, and that is going to take time, because now...
Same number of foreigners, so like the foreigners, like you got the foreigner cap, right? So the pool overwhelmingly has to be Aussie players.
That's right. So you're either... the term recycling the A-League players is going to happen to an extent, but these NPL players are going to have to step up. Are they going to be at that level day one, round one? No, they're not. They're not. So I think the product, the standard, across the board can dip a little bit until they find their feet, until they get that experience.
And then they come good, don't
and
they?
then it shoots up again.
Adelaide United's A-League men's team has a couple of weeks until the season starts. For the women, on Sunday, the 15th, they're playing at Cooper Stadium in a standalone game, which is a fantastic opportunity for them from the flow-on from the FIFA Women's World Cup. We're hoping to get as many people to Cooper Stadium as possible for the kickoff just after 2:30 p.m. I wanted to go to you all now for your ideal starting 11 for Adelaide United. So we're putting a caveat on this that every player is at full fitness. So I'm shattered for Harry van der Sarg. I saw him at the NPL final where he doesn't know when he's going to play again. It's as pretty straightforward as that, which is shattering because he showed so much promise when he came over to the Reds. Josh Cavallo is under an injury cloud at the moment, and there's a couple of other players that may be unavailable, but it's great to see players back to full fitness like Bernardo, Johnny Yull is a player a lot of supporters are really excited to see get consistent games, because if he can live up to his expectation, there's some exciting things for him coming in. Jay Barnett was really consistent when given his opportunity at the club. So all of these players are at full fitness. Robbie Cornthwaite, we are heading to you for your starting 11 for Adelaide United.
All right, I'm just going to keep it short and sweet. I'm not going to give too many explanations. So obviously Joe Gauci in goal. At right back, I'm going to stick with Javi Lopez. I still think he's one of the best defenders in the league. Popovic as one of the centre backs alongside Ansell, as we mentioned. Ryan Kiddo, the skipper, obviously made left back his own this season. I'm going to go for Tennicliffe as the holding midfielder in the middle of the park. In front of him, we're going to have Barnett and Zach Clough. Iran Kunda on one of the wings, Ibasuki up front, and Halloran on the left. And I just think with Clough and Halloran in particular, I'll give him 2 or 3 games. If not, maybe Bernardo plays as the 10 or he comes in out wide. And that's pretty much it. I think Isaias is going to be an impact player for me this year. Last half an hour, you're winning, you need someone to control the game, slow things down. He's going to come on and do that job.
Awesome. Thank you. Trav, is yours any different to Robbie's?
It is a bit different. Gauci, Panache, but at the back, Warland and Ansell, Kiddo at the back. My midfield's a bit different. So I've gone with Alagic, Clough and Johnny Yull, and Luca up top with Jovanovic, with Halloran and Irankunda. So
you're basically on the Adelaide United Childcare Centre there. They're all very young players.
What's your average age?
22.73.
I like it. It's different.
Hey, we're talking about this before. I can say that because I'm not the coach.
Yeah, but that's an exciting team.
Absolutely.
It is.
All right,
yeah.
Brucey.
Might leak a couple of goals, but we spoke
Well,
about the
score a
defence,
few.
didn't we?
Yeah, score a few anyway.
You just got to score more. That's it.
I had Gauci in goals. I got a few sort of 50-50s. So Panache and Harvey. See, that's a decision that I'm yet to make. Ansell and Warland, the centre-back pairing. Kidder obviously out at left-back. I think the midfield is going to be really interesting this year. So I've gone with Clough, Tennicliffe and Isaias as the starters. Notwithstanding, keen to see Barnett get back to fitness. Johnny Yull's had an outstanding pre-season and Alagic showed his worth last year. So Carl's got a lot of options in that centre mid. We didn't speak about Louis Dorigo, but can understand how that decision gets made when you're looking at the talent in the centre of midfield. Halloran on the right, Ibasuki up front, and I've gone another 50-50, Irankunda and Bernardo. I think Irankunda gets the green light to start with, but Bernardo's been a little bit forgotten about because he didn't play a minute last year, I don't think. No. So, struggled to get back in, but that's a player, big raps from a very young age, and definitely has quality and arguably more consistency than an Irankunda. Just sort of depends on the game, whether you go the Irankunda Bernardo or the Panache Harvey.
Boys, thank you for your contribution to not just today, but to the football club. And I know that there is going to be an official celebration, I believe, in January for the 20-year history of the football club, which hope to see you all there. Bruce, we had to book you in a year in advance, basically after last year's roundtable. So thanks for making yourself available. Trav, thank you for being here an hour early today.
Yeah.
We appreciate that because you're so committed.
I always get the times wrong.
I know.
Maybe it's an age thing. I'm struggling with that at the moment.
Good luck.
They put it in our
about daylight
calendars.
savings?
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Good luck on the golf course with Carl and Robbie. We can see all your work on Channel 7 and, of course, via Adelaide United's media channels as well. Thank you to all of the sponsors. Don't forget to head to Cooper Stadium for the women's game this weekend and, of course, our men's season coming up very soon. The merchandise looks amazing. It's paying a little bit of love back to the first game, the home shirt this year. The away shirt has a collar on it, and there's a lot more fun planned at all of the home matches this season. If you're travelling away, make sure you find an Adelaide United supporter near you. And thanks for listening to us on the round table. Go you Reds.